In the tapestry of time, classic cars are not mere machines. They are the epitome of form and innovation. Each curve and chrome whisper tales of the past. The sleek lines of the '57 Chevy and the bold fins of a Cadillac Eldorado embody the spirit of their times, a moving sculpture of Art Deco elegance and mid-century modern futurism. Envision the maestros like Harley Earl and Pininfarina, who crafted not just cars, but steel legacies. These icons harmonized aerodynamics with artistry, creating more than vehicles. They forged cultural statements. In the heart of classic car collecting lies a trove of ingenuity and history, a celebration of craftsmanship that fuels the passions of enthusiasts, preserving the joy of motoring for posterity. Join us in honoring these timeless marvels, the masterpieces that continue to ignite the collector's spirit, safeguarding a legacy of design and the exhilarating essence of driving. This is the allure of classic cars. Garrett, can you get us started from your perspective as a muscle car guy? How do you see the design evolution of American muscle cars influencing modern automotive design?
Well, I'll be honest. I think it's safe to say that the one vehicle that I think a lot of people it's distinctly tell that there's a correlation of modern, like the current design to the old, is the Challenger. Dodge did a phenomenal job with the late model Challenger in '09 when they introduced it, '08, '09 to obviously this last model year, 2023. It had the most distinct, obvious, design characteristics from the original '70. And I think that's why it had so much allure to sales too, because it didn't take too much thinking to see like, okay, where in the body lines or what little design cues did they bring back from, like, let's say like the Mustang with the fastback into the new body styles. They just went straight for it. They have the headlights from a '70. It was just very obvious. So I think Dodge did the best job of that. A lot of the other ones you kind of have to put in. You have to put your creative cap on a little bit to find those little bitty cues that they did, because they're there for all the other cars, but they're just not as obvious as, say, like the Challenger.
Yeah, that's a good one. I do feel like when I look at old pictures or you see like the cars driving around in Cuba today, I feel like there's just an absence of unique design that the cars used to have. It's like the character and what makes them special. Ray, can you talk a little? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
I was going to ask Ray, growing up, what cars did you love? And how does that affect cars that you like now?
Well, I kind of like the cars now that I grew up with. My first car was a '55 Ford, $200. That was around 1964.
Oh, crap.
That accidentally wasn't my fault, but it got totaled. So that was a '55 Ford. My second car was a '46 Ford, which I really liked. It had a flathead with dual Hollywood mufflers, had a spotlight that really worked. So it was a fun car. $250.
$200 or $250.
I want a Hollywood muffler too.
So
Nikki, Nikki, you showed me a preview. Let me see that. What is that?
It's a
T-bucket.
T-bucket.
Oh,
a double
nice.
bucket, actually, it's called.
Nice.
Yeah. It was my first car about 35 years ago. My first street rod, I should say, was about $6,000, $6,500. Went to Ohio to buy it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, you're going to be the senior statesman among us since you bought your first car for $200.
Yeah. So I like street rods,
Ed, can you talk a little bit about how VinWiki started and how it plays into the storytelling aspect of cars?
Absolutely.
Today?
Yeah, so we started VinWiki as a crowdsourced version of Carfax, the idea being that stakeholders, anybody that knew anything about a car's history or its past, could contribute materially to a timeline of what the car is and what it means. And when we see these cars that become significant, Obviously, there are criteria like rarity and power and performance and aesthetics and things like that that we do always see correlate with long-term value. But beyond that, if any of these cars have a significant owner or used in a significant way, featured in a significant movie or story, it just totally transforms the way that a market or an audience of any type can perceive it. And so regardless of the age of the car and regardless of the value of the car, we just tried to build a way for people to attach themselves and their stories to the car, and by the VIN or by the license plate on our app. And then we have a YouTube channel that really blows it up into a longer form style.
So you're just getting a lot more detail than a Carfax.
That's the idea. I mean, this is not the same kind of institutional data that you would get from insurance companies and police reports and body shops and things like that. I mean, this is really how the cars are used. If a car is used in a crime and the license plate's in a frame of a newspaper story, it'll be in our app within 5 minutes. And so we've got about 500,000 users that are constantly searching for new and interesting information about any cars they can find. And it kind of becomes a giant living and breathing database of information that lives alongside Carfax or AutoCheck or Experian and things like this, just to be an interesting information source, and at times, pretty entertaining.
Can you talk a little bit about the cars that you love? I see more than one Lamborghini, and you worked there for a while too. So
I did. Yeah. I was the director of sales at Lamborghini Atlanta from 2009 to 2015. And so I love Italian cars, British sports cars as well. I mean, I grew up, in the late 90s, early 2000s, playing the video games and watching the movies of the time. And so, there's something that can just never be cooler to anyone than the cars that were awesome when they were, say, 15 to 20 years old. And so I was 16 years old when the Lamborghini Murcielago was introduced, and it remains my favorite car. And I've owned 9 of them at this point, and I've certainly tried my best to sort of add to the provenance and the history and the significance of the cars in ways that the factory even didn't keep very good records. And so, a lot of the idea for VinWiki came out of my own expression of my personal passion for cars like these, and sort of trying to curate the perception and the history and the public understanding of what the cars are, why they are special, how rare they are, and what that ought to mean for the values. And fortunately, over the last decade or so, we've been able to see that actually reflected in the values. And so my net worth is wildly, disproportionately, and irresponsibly invested in Lamborghinis.
Nikki, how about you? Talk about, because you too, there's a nostalgic element to the cars that mean something to you.
Well, yeah, I had a mild midlife crisis, I guess you can call it that. And I woke up one day and I decided, well, how can I fix this? So I bought a Ferrari. And I bought the Ferrari that I lusted after when I was a teenager, which was a 360 Spider. I grew up in that time frame, and I love the 355 and I love the 360. I also had a 6-month stint at Ferrari. I worked there in the communications department before I went to college in the States. And then I left for a few years and lost touch with them. But that was the car at the time, and I loved that car. And a dear friend of ours who has a significant number of cars had this Grigio alloy model with the manual transmission, which I cannot stress enough. And the condition was perfect. And I convinced him to sell it to me. And that solved my midlife crisis. And I put on 2B exhausts and decided that I wanted to do what I'm trying to do now.
It's the right kind of midlife crisis. And the right car. I had a gated manual 360 Spider for a long time as part of the rental fleet. It was probably the highest mileage one in the country at that point. And
isn't it reliable? Ed, you tell me this. It's a reliable car.
They're all reliable as long as they don't sit. Yeah. As long as you keep putting miles on them, they are fantastic.
They will punish you if they sit. They will punish you mercilessly.
That's right. But it doesn't get much better. And it's one of those cars that the first time you saw it, it just had such an impression on you. And I think as we create a thread of cars that have, maintained or developed a long-term value, it has to be something that just slaps you in the face the first time you come across one. The way people always talk about reacting to a Countach or a Miura or a 250 Ferrari of any sort, the impact that these have in the first moment is what leads to the allure and the desire and the fascination that results in ultra long-term value.
No, and just the way it sounds, because of all the climate regulations, and I'm not going to discuss those, but because it's just 5 valves per cylinder, titanium conrods, and that aspirated engine, you can't beat that. It sounds like thunder on earth, and it sounds like a soprano. It's something that just gets you inside. I can't live without it. When I drive that car, I'm happy, and if it makes you happy, it can't really be that bad.
I think they
that had to be the most enthusiastic. That had to be the most enthusiastic response to how a car feels that I've ever heard in my entire life. So I applaud you for that. That's great.
Amen. So I'm waiting for my midlife crisis and for a car to slap me across the face.
It'll happen.
That's it.
Let's go to segment 2.